Boker Tov, Shavua Tov, a guten Erev Tu B'Shvat. Today's daf is Daf Yud Gimel in Nizir. Daf Yud Gimel, we'll start from the Mishnah at the bottom, Yud Beis and Mit Beis. Mishnah says like this: Hareni Nazir Shiyeh Ben. I'm going to be a Nazir. Remember, a Stam Nazir is 30 days. And he said, I want to be a Nazir when I will have a son. In other words, as soon as I have a son, I'm going to be so grateful to God that I'll decide to sanctify myself and be a Nazir. Remember, we learned that it's not good. It's not necessarily recommended to be a Nazir, because why should, remember, Copper says that you're like sort of a sinner. God gave you these pleasures, and who are you to deny these good pleasures that God has given us? There are enough things that are usher to us, enough things that are treif and not kosher and this and that, enough limitations that we have. Why are you adding more? However, for a person really did it, l'shem shamayim, to sanctify himself and be on a higher madrega, that's his prerogative. So, he says, you know, when I have a son, if I have a son, I'll be a Nazir. When he said Ben, does that mean a son? Usually it means a son. Benola Ben, he has a son. Haray's a Nazir. Is there any big chiddush in that? The Gemara will ask it. What's the big deal? He says, I want to be a Nazir when my wife has a baby boy. Okay, as soon as he's the baby boy, he's a Nazir. No lo bas tumtum and let's say he had not a boy, he had a girl, or a tumtum, where the genitals, it's not defined, it's hidden, and you can't tell if it's a boy or girl, or androgynous, which is a person who has both kinds of genitals, not clearly a boy. Ain't a Nazir, he's not a Nazir. In other words, he's not a Nazir because a Nazir, as we'll see, remember, when it comes to a Nadarim, we said, Stam Nadarim lahachmer. Even when it's unclear, by Nadarim, we go l'chumra. Not necessarily by Nazir. By Nazir, we had back on Daf Ches, Machlokes Rav Shapiro. We're going to talk about that now, whether a suffix Nazir is Lakula or Lachumra. So over here, we're pretty much going this idea here, that we're going with the Shita of Rav Yehuda, that a suffix Nazir is Lakula. That's the first, that's the beginning of the Mishnah seems to go with his opinion. Right? Let's say he didn't say a son. When I have a child, then I feel no labas androgynous. That's a child. Even a tumtum or androgynous may not be the child that you wish for, but it's a child, right? A daughter, any child is a nazir. So again, if he said these lashonas, if he said I have a ben, I want to be a nazir, that's a nazir. If he didn't have a son, and he said I want to have a son, then he's not a nazir, right? Pretty clear. If he says if I have a child, and he has a child, he's a nazir. What happens? He pila at the top of your gimel. He pilished. What happens if his wife miscarried? Now, when there's a miscarriage, we're not sure was that a son who just died because something happened at birth or whatever, or was it something? It wasn't the child wasn't viable in the first place. So he pilished ta'ina nazirs. We'll see this goes with the shita of Rav Yehuda. He says suffix nazirus. If it's a suffix, we go l'kula because the person has to be extremely clear. If you're not clear, the person is lahafli. You got to be very clear. So you weren't sure. If you're not sure, you're not a Nazir. That's Rav Yehuda's opinion. If it's a suffix, you're not a Nazir. Rav Shimon holds no. Suffix Nazirus is l'chumra, l'hachmer. Suffix is l'hachmer, just like we saw by Nadarim in Mesech Nadarim. Suffix Nazirus is l'chumra, and therefore Rav Shimon says you've got to keep the Nazirus. Maybe you had a child, right? You said if I have a child, I want to be a Nazir, and then your wife miscarried. So you're not sure, was it a Vel Shanam? So Rav Shimon says you must keep Rav Shimon Omer. And what should you say? What should you say? Yomer. Im haya ben kayama. If this child was a viable child, but it died for some reason, Hariani knows that I'm fulfilling my obligation. Im lav, if it wasn't really a viable child, so I didn't have a child, but I'm not sure. Hariani nazir. I'm still going to be a nazir, but now I'm going to be as a goodwill. In other words, I'm not fulfilling my prior obligation that I promised I'll be a nazir if I have a child. I'm a Nazir. I'm becoming a Nazir now to make sure that I fulfill my obligation because I may be obligated or not. If I'm obligated, I want to fulfill my obligation. If I'm not obligated, then I'm going to be a Nazir anyway because I'm not sure if I'm obligated or not. And you have to go l'chumra. Let's say after she miscarried, remember the man said, if I have a child, I want to be a Nazir. His wife miscarried. According to Rav Yehuda, he doesn't have to be a Nazir. It's a suffix. Let's say after she miscarried, Baruch Hashem, she became pregnant again later, and now she had a viable child. Now she had a viable child. Harayz and Nazir. According to the Tanakhama, which we'll see is Rav Yehuda. Usually the Bar Pluk, the Gemara is going to say it, but anyway, the Bar Pluk, Rav Shimon is always Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, Stam Shimon in the Mishnah, and we have Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda argues with Rav Shimon and he owes it what? Sufim Zir Shulakula. So over here, when she had a child afterwards, a Reza Nazir, now he's a Reza Nazir. Now you fulfill the obligation. Now you're obligated to be a Nazir, right? Because he said, if I have a child, I want to be a Nazir. Okay, his wife miscarried. You're not sure, you don't have to be a Nazir. Now she had a child. Now you have to fulfill your obligation right now. According to Rav Shimon, though, who said before by a suffix, you should be a Nazir anyway because you're not sure. So again, you have to stipulate now. Rav Shimon says, Rav Shimon Yomer, that's the first part of Rav Shimon when she first miscarried. He says, okay, he says, listen, you have to be a Nazir Misafik. Either he's a chov or either it's an obligation, or if he's not, they're doing it anyway because maybe you're obligated. Now Rav Shimon says, Yomer, here you have to stipulate. Imarishan ben Kayama, if the first child that was miscarried was really a viable child, but it died, then Arishan Chalav is Unadava. So the first one was fulfill my obligation. And now I'll just be a Nazir again anyway. There's no more obligation. He didn't say every time my wife has a child that I'm going to be a Nazir. He said if my wife has a child, I'll be a Nazir. So when his wife miscarried, Rav Shimon said before, you're not sure. Maybe you're obligated, so you have to keep it anyway. Maybe you're obligated. Either you're doing your obligation or not. You're just you're becoming a Nazir now. Now when she had the child the second time, again, he said he has to keep it again. Why? Because maybe the first time he just was not obligated, and now he's really fulfilling the obligation because now she had the child. So if Shimon says Yomer, it's like he stipulates this. He doesn't have to, I don't know if he has to say it out loud, but it's clear that's what he means. Imaration ben Kayam. If the first child was a regular child but it died, then I fulfill my obligation. Now when he becomes a Nazir again, now he's saying I'm just doing it as another. He probably has to say this because otherwise you're not really a Nazir. So he has to say it because maybe he already fulfilled his obligation and now he doesn't have to. So he wants to be a Nazir again. Yes, Sam, but he's a Nazir. Imlav, if the first one was not a viable child, it was a miscarriage, and he wasn't really obligated to be a Nazir before, and before it was an Adava, he just said, okay, I'll be a Nazir now. Imlav, Arisha, Adava, Vezuchoba. So that's what he stipulates. So again, Rav Shimon goes with the opinion that, excuse me, Suffolk Nazir says, Chumra, Achmer, and Abiyud holds Makula. Abiyud holds Makula, and not like Nadarim. Nazir is different than Nadarim, according to Abiyud. Says the Gemara, Hi, my Lamema. What's the first part of the Mishnah teaching? Hareni knows like Shia Ben says, I want to be a Nazir when I have a son, and he had a son. He's a Nazir. What's the chiddush in that? Hi, my Lamema. He says Mishum Seifa. The chiddush is the Seifa. When he says if his wife gave birth to either a daughter, Bas, Tumtum, or Androgynous, either a daughter or a Tumtum or an Androgynous, where it's not clearly a boy, ain't a Nazir. That's the chiddush. And it's when he said if my wife has a son, I want to be a Nazir. There's no chiddush in that. If he has a son, she has a son. He becomes a Nazir at that point. But if he doesn't, if she has gave birth to something else, so there he's not a Nazir. A Nazir. Isn't that also obvious? He said a son. If I have a son, cheat them out. The same like shibana who the comer. He meant to say if I have a child, right? If I have a child, that's also having a child. A girl or a tumtum drugist could also be. He's having children, like Shibana who the comer, Kamash wanted to know that he doesn't mean it because he had specifically son. If he said child, any child is okay. If he had what?
Twin sons.
Okay, but he only was Makaba one Nazirus. So whichever one was born first, that was his Nazir for that. So if I have a son, he might have 100 sons afterwards, right? But if he had a son, as soon as the first son is born, when the first baby came out, he has to start his Nazirus right away. The other one doesn't mean he has to keep another Nazirus. We're going to talk later on today and tomorrow, the next few days, about multiple Naziruses. But here the question is he a Nazir at all? So we have this machlokas reviewed on Reb Shimon. But if he says Hareni Nozik Shiele Ben, it's got to be a boy, not a girl. Imam Shiele Vlad, the Mishnah said if he has a child, then any child is okay. Imam Shiele Vlad, even if he had a daughter or a boy, certainly a boy, even a girl or a tumtum, a drogonus, he's also nothing. Isn't that also obvious? Mao the same of Vlad, the Michshir, you might think a child who was considered important, who had significance to it, and boys were considered more significant than girls in general, and more mitzvahs, etc. And certainly olden times they were more considered more chashuv. Kamashmulan that we don't say that. Since he said a child is a child is a child no matter what. You love your child no matter what, and that's it. That's your child, even if it's not exactly the way you wanted it to be. So Pshitim Sema, I might think Vlad is chashuv like a boy. Mashma, no. When you said vlad, it means any vlad, and you have to be a nazir right away. If his wife miscarried, then he's not a nazir. Man Knani, who's the author of that? Rabbi Yehuda decree. It's Rabbi Yehuda decree. He had back in Daf Ches last week that if a person says, I want to be a nazir on the condition that the pile of grain that I have out there is 100 kur, a large amount, and then when he came to check it, it was lost or stolen or burnt up or it's not there anymore. What do? Found it's not there anymore. Reb Shimon says it's also you're a nazir. Why? Because Safek Nazir is the chumrah. Maybe there was 100. Maybe there was 100 kur there. Rabbi Yehuda says no, matter. Safek Nazir is the hakol. So here again, we're going with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Safek Nazir said if I have a child, I want to be a nazir, and his wife miscarried. You're not sure if it was a viable child or not. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't have to keep Nazir. So according to Rabbi Shimon, you do. Rabbi Shimon, he says like this. Rabbi Shimon says the person upon who took the netter become a nazir should say Yomer Ima Ben Kayama. If that child was a viable child, I'm fulfilling my obligation. I'm going to be a nazir. Im Lav, if it wasn't a viable child, so I haven't fulfilled. I don't have any obligation yet because I didn't have a child yet. I'm any nazir and dove. I'm going to be a nazir of my own free will, meaning I'm not fulfilling my obligation that I said the condition before. If I have a child, I'll be a nazir. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure if I had a child or not, so I'm going to be a nazir anyway. But I'm not sure if I fulfill my obligation or not. Let's say this case, he says, I want to be a nazir when I have a son. The pila ishto, and his wife miscarried. Not sure if she had a son or not. The hifrish carbon, and he was mafresh carbon. It doesn't make any sense. I think when he says like Shiur ben, it just means a son. It could be that she miscarried a boy, or it just could mean in general like a vlad. The hifrish carbon, and he set aside a carbon for his nazirus, meaning it's a suffix. The chazar v'yolda, and then she gave birth afterwards. Now, what's the halach? So the Rashi explains, is it holy or not? No, you have to sanctify it again. If you were not chayiv to be a nazir, so when you set aside the karbanos, it was a mistake, right? Take the shpatos according to Beis Hillel is a mistake, is a valid mistake. So now over here, where you're not sure, if it's carbon, you set aside a carbon and the chazar v'yolda, and now she gave birth afterwards. So do you have to be makdish it again? What's the halach over here? What's the deal? So I'll leave it in mind. Well, who are you going according to? You leave it Reb Shimon, mighty boile. If you go according to Reb Shimon, that a suffix is chumrah, Reb Shimon suffix is here, so the hachmer. So here was a suffix. He has to keep his naziris anyway. What do you mean he was makdish the animals? What are you talking about? He has to keep the naziris. So you're not sure if it's a chova or he just wants to be a nazir. So like Reb Shimon said in the Mishnah, he should be a nazir, and he should say, if I'm fulfilling if I was obligated to, I'm obligated to. If I wasn't really obligated because she didn't have a viable child, I'm doing it anyway just to be yotzei. But either way, you have to be a nazir and you have to be mafresh karbanos. So what's your problem? Ella leave it Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe it's Rabbi Yehuda. The Amr Safek Naziris is the hakol, so you don't have to really keep naziris. And he set aside the karbanos. My kaddish or low kaddish. Are these animals? If he did it, they set it aside under the understanding that he's going to be a nazir. But then it turns out he doesn't have to be a nazir because it's a suffix. Are the animals holy or not? And if they're not holy, you have to sanctify. It says more my nafkamina. Here's the question: can you take its shearings and can you work with it during that time, between the time that his wife miscarried and he set aside the animals until the time she had a viable child? Let's say 9 months later, was he allowed to work with it, or was it kadosh? And was he allowed to have the shearings or not? Take that question stands. In other words, the Rashi says with the lines get one mafkamina, you have the kadosh alo. The Hayolda, the Highlands, you have to do afterwards. Can be boile. Says the Ran, it says Rashi in the fourth line. If you say as soon as she was ma'pil, as soon as she was miscarried and he thought he had an obligation, he set aside the animals and they're holy. Also because he can't do work with them. Eliyamat the lo chayla naziris ella mishah shechasher b'yolda. That's the question. He would have been mutter gizavoda until such time as he sanctified it again after his wife gave birth to a viable child. So that's the question that he raised over here, and the answer is teku. The question stands. Interestingly, here we see teku, and we'll see tomorrow tiboy, which is tomorrow's on Amid Beis. I don't mean tomorrow. I mean on Beis. In a few minutes we'll see tiboy, which is really the same as teku, right? The question stands. Tiboy is more the lashon of Yerushalmi. And here again, like we saw in Adoram, which is full of Yerushalmi Lashon, sometimes in Nizir we also have this similar Lashon. So that's the question that he raises. Rav Abba asks this kasha of Huna, and if you set aside the kavodas in between, according to Reb Shimon, they're vade kadosh because he has to keep an Naziris. According to Reb Yehuda, he has to keep an Naziris. Were they holy before or not? Misafik, could you say that he was mafretzim or not? Not clear. Boy Minei Ben Rechumi, interesting name there. Ben Rechumi Me'abaya. And this is an example where you see that somebody has a name which is probably not his real name. I mean, Ben Rechumi, his father could have been called Rechumi, but we'll see based on the Gemara in a few lines, sometimes they attached a name to somebody because of a question that he raised or because there was a topic that he discussed with that word in there. So he's called that way so people remember he's the one who raised this question, as we'll see. Listen to this. Hareini Nozir Likshieli Ben. Reuben says, listen carefully to the case. Reuben says, I'm going to be a Nozir when I have a son, like we had before. Mishnah said, if I have a Nozir, if I have a child, a boy, I'll be a Nozir. So what Reuben said, I want to be a Nozir when I have a son. Shimon heard him, Va'amar Va'ani. Some of the guys argue, the Gemara says Va'ala, and the side he says Va'ani. Me too. Mahu. And I explained the way Rashi learns. Ma'u adibure mashma. Is he, when he says me too, meaning when who has a son? When you have a son? Reuben says, when I have a son, when I have a son, I'm going to be a Nozir. Shimon says, oh, that's wonderful. When you have a son, I'll be a Nozir too. When he says me too, I as well, does he mean when you, Reuben, as a boy? Or does he mean when I, Shimon, have a boy? That's the question he raises. Again, that's what Reuben said. Shimon heard, and he said, is he going on? Again, the way Rashi learns, Shimon says, yeah, when you have a son, I'm going to be a Nazir too. It's such a nice occasion. You haven't had children for 45 years. If you have a child, I also want to be a Nazir. Diborg on his words. Or Gubimash doesn't mean he himself. I also say it's a nice idea. You want to be a Nazir when you have a child? When I have a child, I want to be a Nazir. What does he mean by that? If you want to say Agufe Mashma, that Menastam we mean when he himself has a child. Again, Reuben says, when I have a child, I want to be a Nazir. And Shimon says, me too. Ani also. Does he mean when Shimon has a child? If we assume it means, then he says, he's going on Shimon having a child. Let's say he says, let's say Reuben says, I want to be a Nazir when you, I'm so happy for you, when you, Shimon, have a child, I want to be a Nazir. Right? And Shimon heard, and Shimon said, yeah, me too. And he said, Shimon heard and said, me too. Mao. Does he mean also? Does he mean, yeah, when I have a child, I want to be a Nazir? Reuben said to Shimon, when you have a child, I, Reuben, want to be a Nazir. And Shimon said, me too. Does he mean when Shimon has a child? I like you, I love you, to do the same thing. Meaning, just like you said to me, when I have a child, Reuben said to Shimon, when you have a child, Reuben wants to be a Nazir. Shimon saying to Reuven, you know what, Reuven? Me too. I love you in the same way. When you have a child, I want to be a Nazir. How does that work? What does that mean? That's why the Lashon of Rachimna ends up Ben Rechumi. It hit me now, because that's a strange name, Ben Rechumi. You probably remember this Lashon. If you want to say, listen, call Ba'an Pei, whenever you're facing somebody, the other guy is present here, right? And you say something, the guy says, listen, I want to toast your nice clothing. I want to toast. You're such a wonderful man. I want to toast you. What's the proper thing to do? To toast him back, right? To say something nice back. So if I said to you, listen, if you have a child, I'm going to be a Nazir. So it may be proper for you to say, yeah, when I have a child, the reverse, you'll be a Nazir. Maybe as in terms of Koban thing, when it's in Kasifale Milsi, he's embarrassed. He's embarrassed not to, right? He's embarrassed not to reply in kind, right? To say he's embarrassed, like you're whenever you're in front of him, however you said it, and he wouldn't say, because otherwise you might say over here, he must mean that. And if he just wants to say, listen, when I have a child, what happened? Reuben said to Shimon, when you have a child, I'll be a Nazir. So what is Shimon's retort? When I have a child, I'll be a Nazir? He doesn't have to say that to Reuben. He could just say that to himself, right? He goes, yeah. He might come home and tell his wife, Reuben said that if we have a baby, he's going to be a Nazir. Maybe I should be a Nazir too. He doesn't tell that to Reuben, right? When he tells to Reuben, it's like he's telling him, yeah, Ba'ani, me too. Probably saying that when you, Reuben, have a child, I, Shimon, will be a Nazir. So that when he's present in front of him, it's embarrassed not to. He's just retorting in kind. He gave me a gift. How would it be if I didn't give him a gift? Like that kind of a thing. So if that's the case, but let's say he wasn't there. Let's say, in fact, Tosfos has this as the Divrei HaMaskil. He says the names out loud. If Reuben says, I want to be a Nazir when Levi has a child, Levi's not here. Levi's in another place. Reuben says, I'll be a Nazir when Levi has a child. Leploni ben. And Shimon heard that. Me too. Mao. When he's not in front of Levi, in other words, he's giving honor to Levi. If Levi has a child, Reuben says, I'll be a Nazir. So when Shimon said, me too, maybe Shimon's going by himself. Shimon's saying, if I have a child, I'll be a Nazir. He's not like he's not giving cover to Levi. Levi isn't here. Oh, I love him as much as you, just like you love Levi. And you say if Levi has a child, Levi's not even here, but you're bragging about your good friendship with Levi. You say, if Levi has a child, I'll be a Nazir. So maybe you also mean, Shimon says, me too, I also. Maybe he has to say also, if Levi has a child, I'll also be a Nazir. To boy, the question stands. Interesting, if you see over here, what does the Aleph refer to in the Tiboy? It's probably just going on the Rambam. Yeah, on the Rambam in Nizir. It's right. But it's funny how the Lashon changes from take to Tiboy.
Rashi says take.
Yeah, take. Yeah, that's what he says. Take. It's the same thing. The names of this. That's just confirming that it's the same Lashon.
Or he had a different Girsa.
Yeah, that's possible.
Do we know that he knows what it means to be a Nazir?
I think we're saying he knows that, and I think you're raising another good point, that he knows what it is to be a Nazir. But again, if he meant this, you could ask him, what did you mean? Why didn't you say, what did you mean? We had before cases, you say, well, ask him what he means. It could be what he means. He says, me too. And he himself isn't sure what that means. He says, I said me also. What is the stam? What is the stam case there? That's what. Yeah, I think that's what you have to understand. Says the Mishnah. Now, until now, we know a stam nazir is 30 days. So we said before that it's divrei Kabbalah. Some base it on. We had before the machlokas. We're going to have it again a couple of days about 29 or 29 or 30 days. But the basic idea is that it's based on a smachta. The Peroshia Gadel. That Yi as gematria 30, as we've said many times, gematria is in Chazal is one word for one word, one word for one word, or one word for the numerical value of the word. So here it's like Melvin Garti, Tari Mitzvah Shemarti, Garti, one word. Here also Yi as gematria 30, so it's time there's 30 days, unless you specify more. You could specify more, and there's four kinds of nazir. There's a stam nazir, or either 30 days or whatever time there's a Nazir Olam, and there's a Nazir Le Olam, and there's a Nazir Shimshon. We discussed that. So here we get into a question when he said he promised two Nazirises. He said two Nazirises, and how do they fall upon one another? So the Mishnah is like, it's ready Nazir. He says, I want to be a Nazir right now. I'm going to be a Nazir. Stam Nazir 30 days. And then he says, I also want to be a Nazir when I have a son. Now it's very possible that he'll do his Naziris now, and his wife will give birth maybe in 6 months, in a year, or in a week. So if it's more than 30 days from now, no problem. He finishes Naziris, and when he finishes Naziris, he has to bring the Karbanos. But, as we'll see later on, and I would point it out right now, right, while we're learning this Mishnah, so it'll make a little more sense. Take a look at the Mishnah on, it's not really tomorrow's Daf, it's the next day's Daf. Take a look at the Mishnah Daf Tes Vav and Aleph. And we're facing Yud Dalet now, if you're, unless you have an art scroll. But if you look at the Mishnah on Tesvav, it says over there, Ben, right? When I have a son, the Nazir may Yom, and to be a Nazir for 100 days. This will make more sense in a few minutes. This Mishnah from our Gemara. No lo ben at shivim lo yivzik klum. La'achar shivim sosa shivim she'ein tiglachas pachas m'shoshim yom. Those are the words. I'm not going to talk about the details of the Mishnah right now. We'll get into that in Mitzvah Shem tomorrow, the next day. But the key of those words, she'ein tiglachas pachas m'shoshim yom. You can only, when a person finishes in the Naziris, what does he do? Besides the karbonos, he has to cut his hair, to shave his hair. Okay, and he has to have 30 days growth. That's why there's a minimum. Mistam Naziris is 30 days of being a Nazir, but you also have 30 days growth of Naziris. Now, normally that's not a problem because you're a Nazir for 30 days and you have 30 days growth. For those who have hair, right? It goes, if 30 days growth, if it's less than 30 days, you can't bring the karbonos because you need 30 days growth. That's the lotion of she'ein tiglachas. You don't shave unless for 30 days, meaning you don't shave, and the tiglachas meaning shaving and bringing the karbonos. So you have to have 30 days growth. So here we now go, let's look at our Mishnah on Yud Gimel on the base. So Rainy Nazir, I'm going to be a Nazir right now, but Nazir Kshiyam, and I also want to be a Nazir when I have a son. His Chilmona Shalo. Now again, if he finished his 30 days and then sometime later on his wife had a baby, 2 months, 2 years, whatever, no problem. Let's say though he started counting his Naziris because he said his Naziris first. I'm a Nazir first, I'm a Nazir now, and I would be a Nazir when my wife has a baby. His Chilmonas Shalo, and then he had a child, right? And he had a child in middle of his Naziris. Mashlim as Shalo, v'yachkachmona as Shel beno. What he does is he finishes his. This is nice and simple. Because I said first, I'm going to be a Nazir. And then another Naziris took place because I said I want to be a Nazir when my wife has a baby. When his wife had the baby, let's say she had the baby sometime in the 30 days that he was already a Nazir. So he has to complete his first Naziris there first because he has to have 30 days to be able to bring the karbanos and shave, etc. So what does he do? He finishes his 30 days, shaves, bring the karbanos, and then starts over again the Naziris for the son. That's the simple case. Let's say he said the other way around. I want to be a Nazir when I have a son. And he said that first. I want to be a Nazir when I have a son. And then he said the Nazir, and I also want to be a Nazir. I want to be a Nazir now, like from right now. But he said first when I have a son. Now he didn't have a son yet. But what does he do? His chil monesh shelo. He started counting his Naziris because he said, I want to be a Nazir when I have a son. But he didn't have the son yet. And then he said, I also want to be a Nazir. But the conditional Nazir, the Nazir with the son, was mentioned before the regular Naziris. And now, well, since he said Nazir, he's not a Nazir yet, he says start counting Nazir from right now. And then the child was born. The same thing as before. In the middle of his Naziris, middle of his 30 days, the child was born. But in the first case, he said, first I want to be a Nazir, then I want to be a Nazir when I have a child. Now he said, first I want to be a Nazir when I have a child, and then he said, I want to be a Nazir. So what do you do now? And he said, first, I want to be a Nazir when I have a child, and then I want to be a Nazir. And he started counting this. He interrupts his Naziris. He puts it aside, and then he counts the son's Naziris, 30 Naziris for the child, because he said the child first. That's the halacha. Because he said the child's Naziris first, when that Naziris comes up, that interrupts his Naziris, and he keeps the 30 days for the son. And then he finishes his. But in this case, according to the Pashup Pshat, Rashi has different girsas, different shot. But the Pashup Pshat is that what does he do? What about shaving? What about shaving and bringing the karbanos? At the end of 60 days, right? It's 60 days because he started counting from now. Again, what did he say? I want to be a Nazir when my wife has a child. And I also want to be a regular Nazir. His wife didn't have a child yet, so he started counting his Naziris. Now, let's say after 10 days, his wife had a baby. So he has to count the Naziris for the child because that was mentioned first. And then he finishes the other 20 days from his first Nazir. He started counting afterwards. He can only shave after the 60 days is up. Why? Because he can't shave after the first 10 days. And if he shaves after the 30 days of the son, he'll only have 20 days left on the other Naziris. And that's not enough to shave on. You have to shave after 30 days. So therefore, what does he do? He waits full 60 days. It's 60 days. It's 10, 30, and 20, an example we gave. Then he shaves, and then he brings 2 sets of karbanos. 2 sets. Why? Because he was really 2 Naziris twice. It was 2 separate Naziris. A man could say, I'd like to pledge 2 Naziris, 5 Naziris, 100 Naziris. We had the cases before. a Nazir is as many as there are days in the year. He can do as many as he wants. So over here he said two separate Nazirs. So the question is, how do they overlap? How does that work? So in the case where he said, I want to be a Nazir, and I want to be a Nazir when my wife is a baby, and he finishes his Nazirs before the wife had the baby, no problem. They're two separate things. Even if he said, I want to be a Nazir, right, first for the baby, whenever the baby comes out, I want to be a Nazir later on. Okay, later on is later on. But if he said it this way, I want to be a Nazir for the baby and a Nazir stam, which means I'm starting now, and he starts now, and then his Nazirs was interrupted by the birth of the baby. So you can't bring the karbanos yet, right? And you can't, if you wait till afterwards, there won't be enough time. You won't have 30 days. And therefore, what you do is you wait till 6 days. Correct. They come together. Boy Rava. So that's all so far. That's simple. Boy Rava, now Rava asked this question. Let's say he says, I want to be a Nazir after 20 days. After 20 days, I want to be a Nazir. And he says, I want to be a Nazir now for 100 days. Now, right away, he's messed up, right? Because the Naziris that's starting in 20 days, we'll call that B. Naziris B is going to interrupt Naziris A. What do you do? Mahu. What do you say? Kivin decholin mea esrim. Kivin dehalein rather. Kivin dehalein mea. Besmo Shalman. Listen, he said, I want to be a Nazir in 20 days. That's the first thing that he said. I want to be a Nazir in 20 days from now. Then he said, I want to be a Nazir now for 100 days. Well, the 100 days will not be completed in 20 days' time, right? You're only going to have 20 days there. So, so maybe you say, listen, it can't be Chaya. What was the first thing that he said? I want to be a Nazir in 20 days. 20 days, I want to start Naziris. Here's a calendar, 20 days, I'm starting this. And then he said, I want to be a Nazir now for 100 days. Well, you can't finish it in time, right, in 20 days. So therefore, suspend it till after you finish the first thing you said. First things first. You said you want to be a Nazir in 20 days. So in 20 days, you'll start Nazir. So you'll be a Nazir for 30 days then. In 50 days, when that person's Naziris is over, you bring you shave, you bring your kabbanas, then you'll start the 100 days. Oh, Dilma, no. Even this, like Yidul Seir Lebasov, listen, do the 20 days now, right, of the 100. Do the 20 days now out of the 100. That's clear. In 20 days, you have to start Naziris for 30 days, because you said 20 days I want to be a Nazir. But then you said I want to be a Nazir now for 100 days. Well, you know what? You could do the 20 days out of the 100 now, right? Just, then stop, do the 30 days that you first obligated yourself to. Then you have 80 days left afterwards to complete it. And when you complete it, so what will you do? You'll do 20 days, then you'll do 30 days, which is your full Naziris that you started out with. You said the first thing you said, you bring your kabbanas after 30 days, Michael, and your Tiglachas. And then when you complete the other 80 days of your first one, then you could shave and bring your kabbanas for the second one. That's it. Or do you say no? Since you can't finish the 100 days before the 20 days starts, you should suspend it and only start the 100 after you finish B, the second, the Naziris that starts in 20 days. So that's the question again. So it's right. That's what he said. But he says me'achshav, right, which says from today. But he can't. But the first thing he said was, after 20 days, I want to be a Nazir. And that contradicts the 100 days, because you can't finish it. You can't finish the 100 days before the 20 days start. So the question is, should you suspend the whole thing and keep the whole thing for later on? You said right now, but the first thing you said is that you want to be a Nazir in 20 days. That Naziris is the first Naziris that should be Chal after 20 days. Then you said, okay, but I want to be a Nazir right now for 100 days. The 100 days won't complete by then. So maybe you should suspend it, or do you say no? Right now is now. You could do 20 days now and finish the 80 days later on. There's enough time there to shave. Since you'll have more than 30 days, you have 80 days later on. So the Gemara says, why do you have to business with 100 days? Why don't you ask the same question about a small Naziris? In other words, not a Naziris 100 days, a days of 100 days, right? Ask a regular question. Rashi says over here, the last 5 lines from the bottom in the page in the Rashi on the left side. Let's say it's the same thing. I want to be a Nazir after 20 days. I want to be a Nazir stam. We hear also, you won't finish the 30 days before the 20-day mark starts. The Nazir stam. The lamed nami b'chof lo shalmi. Below chayla, maybe it's not challah, maybe it's suspended. Odilma, right? Chaylin, and again, like we said in the first case, in the second case of the Mishnah, what do we say? That what do? You keep the date when the baby was born in middle of your first Naziris. Remember, you said I first want to be a Nazir when Mike is a baby, and then I want to be a Nazir Stam, which means you start from right now. The baby was born after 10 days. What did we say in the Mishnah? You got to keep the baby's Naziris from day 10 to day 40. Then you complete the other 20 and bring one carbon at the end. You bring two sets of karbanos and you shave only at the end. So why don't you ask that question? Why don't you ask the same kasha like that? Why do you have to talk about the 100 days? You can talk about the case even of 30 days. It's not Naziris. The answer is he's asking one question within another. He's really asking Enochanami. We're asking both questions. Rashi says Enochanami. Hey, we're asking, what does that mean? Two different questions. Imtim Slom at the top of your dal. Imtim Slom in Naziris Moetas. Do you say Kivin Dasar Yamin, who the Asran? Since what you have, you'll only have what? How many days will you have left in this case? Not the case of the Mishnah where I said she gave birth to the baby after 10 days. That was the case of a baby. Here we're asking a different question. I said up front, I want to be a Nazir after 20 days, right? And then I want to be a Nazir from now, right? Not the 100 days. When he said the question, why don't you just get down? So in that case, what would happen? I would be a Nazir. If I would start right now, I have 20 days. Then I'm going to be interrupted by the Naziris that starts at the 20-day mark. How many days will I have left after I finish that other Naziris? 10 more days. So Imtim Slom Naziris more, it's by a small one, Kivin Dasar Yom and Hu Dias, and all you have that's left is 10 days. Lo Solik Le Halena Sarah. That's not enough. So therefore you don't count those 10. In other words, it's not enough to do it. Leminya Naziris, right? Rashi says, the less bu gidel seir. He puts in the word vadai there, so vadi's really probably going with Nazir. In other words, he's saying, yes, since in the 10 days it's left lo solik le halein sarah, that's not going to finish, right? You can't count that. Even though Rashi says on the top of the page, you won't have enough for 30 days of growth of your hair. Then like we saw in the Mishnah Daf Tesvav. So you don't count it all. The less bugil sayer. It's not chaf right now. If you say in the case again, where I said I want to be a Nazir after 20 days, 30-day Nazir, Stam Nazir is 30 days. I want to be a Stam Nazir after 30 days. And then I want to be also a Nazir from right now. So what are you going to do? You said first after 20 days, that takes precedence because they said that first. So if I want to be a Nazir from right now, I'll only have 20 days and only 10 days left later on. 10 days isn't enough to shave on. So maybe I should say, you know what? You shouldn't start it. Don't start it yet. It's not enough. Like Rashi says, Lo chayla me'achshav. After 20 days, he should start counting two Nazirises. The first one that he mentioned, the Stam Naziris after 20 days, and when that's finished, he counts the second one that he said Stam Naziris. You don't count it all. But so there maybe if you say a Nazir Moatis, there it doesn't count at all. Why? In other words, you're obligated first to keep a Naziris after 20 days for 30 days, right? And then you say, I want to be a Nazir right now, but you can't start a Nazir right now. You won't finish in time. You're not going to finish it. And all you have left is 10 days later on. That's not enough to shave on. So suspend the whole thing till later on. Don't count till later on. If you say that, well, Vadai Nazir Mea Yom, but let's say it's different. Not sure where the body goes. It's probably Vadai, but then if you had 100-day Nazirs, again, when I said after 20 years, I want to be a Nazir, then I said I want to be a Nazir 100 days right now. Keeping this like 10 min Yom and Libasov, since I got 80 days left at the end. Why? Because I said I want to be a Nazir after 20 days. That's a Stam Nazir. And I want to be a Nazir now for 100 days. Okay, so I'll have 20 days now. Then the second Nazir will start after 20 days, which is the first Nazir that I mentioned. And after that's over, I'll have 80 days left. Salcalate, that counts, because since I'll have 80 days left then, and that counts, Salcalate, that could count. That's good. Is that what we say? Oh, no, or maybe you say no. Even on a case like that, where you have 80 days later on, but why start now if you could suspend it and start the whole thing later on? Don't start it at all now. Since you're not going to finish the 100 days by the 20-day mark, maybe leave the whole thing and start later on. Let's say you say, what? It is chal right now. Okay, start it right now. It takes effect right now, since you have 80 days later on to finish it after the Nazir that starts at the 20-day mark. Let's say he says, again, I'm a Nazir after 20 days. Nazir Olam, and now I want to be a Nazir forever. What's a Nazir Olam? What's the Nazir Olam? He's a Nazir forever. He's a Nazir forever. meaning he can never go to a cemetery. Okay, he could shave when the hair gets after 30 days or after a year, whatever it's having. But that's really not that's not tiglachas. That's not tiglachas, the regular. He's not mutter to shave. It's really a nazir. If he's strong enough that he could not shave, he shouldn't shave either, right? Not only is he forbidden to go to the cemeteries, but he really shouldn't shave either. Except if he can't do it, he's allowed to shave. But there is no tiglachas there. So what he said over there is there's no interruption. Me'achshav nazir olam mahu. Is it chal? Maybe you're going to say the first one here, the nazir shouldn't be chal, because at least Rashi says, at least in the 100 days, after 100 days, it's over, right? A regular one is over after 30 days. This is over after 100 days. But a nazir is never olam. It's never olam. It's never finished. It's never finished. It never stops. There's no hefsek. There's no stop to it. So if there's no stop to it, so why start it now? And you're going to start it now? You can't really stop it in the middle and suspend it. Better not to start it all. And that's how you should leave. What do you say? Is it chal now or not? Maybe it shouldn't be chal at all because it doesn't have interruptions. Better to start it later on when there'll be no interruptions. And if you say in all these cases, Rashi says hacha all the questions that we asked till now, you can be shoel on a Nazir. So Naziris is a kind of a netter. We said it's really a shvua. It's a combination, right? We say Yahareni is really a shvua, but it's a kind of a netter. You could be shoel on it and say, I regret it, I didn't mean to do it. That you could do by a regular Nazir, whether it's a Naziris of 30 days, 100 days, even a Nazir Olam, you can be shoel on. Imtim Salomar, you know what? You should be chal right now. Why? Because you could be shoel on the other Nazir. So it's start the Nazir Olam right now, or start the 100 days right now. Here's the simple way. Listen, get around the problem. Well, what's our whole problem? He said, I'm going to be a Nazir after, first I start up, I'm going to be a Nazir after 20 days. And then I want to be a Nazir from right now. Okay, even if you're a 30-day Nazir, it's not going to finish before the 20 days, right? 100-day Nazir is not going to finish before 20 days. The Nazir, I'm certainly not going to finish. Never finishes before 20 days. So, you know what? Start the one you're starting right now, start. And the other one, do Atar Sadaraman. The one that's supposed to start after 20 days, do Atar Sadaraman. Yeah, yeah. Just do Atar Sadaraman and get rid of the whole thing. Maybe say those cases, I'll tell you what, here's a solution. The second one is going to be a problem, going to interrupt the first one. I'll tell you what, even though you mentioned the second one first by saying after 20 days I want to be a Nazir, and then I want to be a Nazir now, either 30 days, 100 days, or forever. So start the one that you're starting now and be showing the other one. Let's say Amar already Nazir Shimshon. Let's say I want to be a Nazir Shimshon. Nazir Shimshon, there's no Atar Sadar. Why? Shimshon couldn't do Atar Sadar. The angel said you have to be a Nazir. There's no such thing as you could be showing a netter if you made the netter, right? You can if you made the netter, you can be showing. But I can't. If I have an obligation to keep the Torah, to keep Shabbos, I can't be showing on that. God made me do that, right? That's our obligation, right? You say Mushba B'Amar Sinai because we already swore to complete it, but it's not something I can be showing on. So we have an obligation to do it. So Amar Reini knows a Shimshon. Let's say he says, let's say he says that after 20 days is not a regular Nazir, it's a Nazir Shimshon that you can't be shoel on. Now you're a Nazir Stam. What do you say here? You can't be shoel on. When you can't be shoel on, is the other one still chal right now? And what are you going to do then? Michael, is it chal, the first one, because it can't complete before. After 20 days, I'm going to be a Nazir Shimshon. And I can't be shoel on that. And then I say I want to be a Nazir from right now. Is the one from right now chal, when it can't finish before the Nazir Shimshonat, olo or not? So these are the questions that are raised, and we don't really have an answer at this point, at least to we'll see. The Gemara is we'll pick up the Gemara tomorrow. The Gemara tries to answer at least the first of these kashas, but the Gemara is going to ask another kasha. The next kasha is, let's say he says, Amr Kamosha. I want to be a Nazir, Kamosha b'Shiva ba'Adar. Moshe on the 7th of Adar. What was on the 7th of Adar?
Born and died.
Born and died. So Rashi says that I want to be a Nazir like Moshe on the 7th day, on the 7th of Adar. And Rashi says, what does that mean? It means Mashma Kamosha Sheniftar b'Shiva. He died on the 7th of Adar. V'Shivlo Shasiyayin, and he wasn't able to drink anymore. Is that a Lashon Naziris at all? Here's another question he's raising, and this isn't even like Intim Salomar. It's like not connected. He says, is that a Lashon Naziris? Tosfos learns that the question is, Moshe was born on the 7th, like Avram said. When he was born, they have simcha. When Moshe Rabbeinu was born, to us that should be they have simcha, not a day of being a nazir, of not drinking wine. The opposite, you could drink wine. How to design not a simcha gedol of yom mutter of yom moso design b'adar mistama rabnan. On the 7th day when he died in Savannah, not because he couldn't drink anymore. Probably a lot of people accepted Naziris. People were in Avela, so they accepted Naziris on them. Rabu Nazir and Yisrael, Machmasar. Right,
actually.
Right. That's right. The Abel is 30 days. But Rastam, I want to be like Moshe Rabbeinu on the 7th day because I'm the other. The Yom Mosa, but Naziris Kibbalah. Oh, is it like he was in Kabbalah Nazir? So can be Voldo, but Simcha Kibbalah. I want to accept myself through like the day he was born, which is the day of Simcha, not a day of Naziris, which is like, again, sanctifying yourself by prohibiting something on yourself, maybe out of Tsar and Avelis and things like that. So what do you do there? You say, Kamosha B'Shiva, what do you, now again, you've asked, let's say he says, no, I meant this. If he said, I meant that, that's what he meant. So then he can clarify it. When he clarifies it, that's his netter. But we don't know what he means, or he doesn't even know what he means. He just said that. Stam. How do we interpret that? These are the questions, and we'll see the answer to at least the first part of this question tomorrow, Mr. Have a good day.
Moshe didn't drink wine until the 8th.